Usedom Island is not just a peaceful coastal area, but also a place where wild boars operate with remarkable coordination. As African swine fever moves closer, the pressure is no longer about whether they can be hunted, but whether they can be controlled before the damage goes beyond all limits. At first, small traps were deployed in the hope of catching individual animals one by one. But after only one attempt, the herd changed. They no longer moved as before, no longer rushed toward food without thinking, but instead began stopping from a distance, watching for longer, and circling wider before approaching. Some people say that wild animals learn by instinct, but wild boars learn from experience. And every time a trap closed, they did not just lose one member, they also gain a lesson, making the entire herd more cautious and far harder to predict. This is exactly what forced the hunters to completely change their approach. Instead of trying to catch one animal at a time, they began thinking about controlling the entire herd in a single attempt. A large trapping system was built, but it no longer looked like a trap. It resembled an open livestock pen, creating no sense of confinement and showing no obvious signs of danger. Food was placed deep inside, and more importantly, there were no sudden changes for many days in a row. At first, the boars only approached the outer edge. Then a few moved in, and little by little, the entire herd began to see this area as a familiar part of their environment. The decisive moment did not come early. It only came when every animal had stepped inside without keeping any safe distance. At that point, the signal was triggered remotely. 4 steel gates slammed shut at the same time, sealing every escape route in an instant. Panic erupted immediately, but the circular design absorbed the full force of the impacts, leaving no weak point to penetrate. Most of the herd was contained.
Capture the hogs and worry about them.
However, a few individuals were still standing outside at that very moment, and they became the next challenge. The ones that remained did not disappear. They simply changed the way they existed. They moved more carefully, chose harder to reach positions, and stayed away from any structure that showed signs of enclosure. That made ordinary traps completely useless. Once again, the strategy had to be adjusted. This time, instead of creating a space that looked like a trap, the hunters created an area that was almost impossible to distinguish from the natural environment.
Cool.
No roof, no obvious enclosure, no visible mechanical signs. Food was spread evenly rather than concentrated in one spot. So the boars did not feel lured in, but simply believed they had found a familiar food source. Patience became the deciding factor. For many days, no action was taken. The distance between humans and the herd was gradually erased. Their caution faded little by little. And then, when the time came, the entire remaining group moved into that area without recognizing any danger at all. This time, the system was activated with precision. There were no mistakes, no animals left standing outside. The entire herd responsible for the greatest damage was finally brought under full control. The final result did not lie in the number, but in the process. These traps did not work because of mechanical force, but because of the way they blended into the environment so completely that they went unnoticed. There was no pressure, no sudden disruption, only a sequence of small changes, repeated long enough for the herd to adjust its own behavior. Instead of being driven into the trap, they walked into it in the very way they believed was safe. And that belief was exactly what was being exploited.
Escaped. But
What made this confrontation so difficult was not the strength of the herd, but its ability to adapt over time. Every encounter became another chance for them to refine the way they survived. Moving later, circling wider, checking more carefully. That forced humans to change as well, not by moving faster, but by becoming more precise. Because in an environment where every sign can be noticed, just one small detail out of place is enough to make the entire system fail before it even has a chance to work.
If this herd can survive tonight, what is preserved is not just a few rows of trees or a patch of farmland. It is an entire year of labor, days under the sun and wind, hours of constant care, all of which can vanish overnight if wild boars sweep through. In many rural areas across the United States, this scenario is no longer unfamiliar. It repeats itself again and again, silently yet devastatingly, as dozens of hectares of land are torn apart before the sun even rises. With wild boars, everything happens faster than human response capacity. They leave little time for thinking or preparation. Once a target is chosen, they move according to their own plan, quietly and with precision. Statistics show that even a group of 15 to 20 individuals is enough to destroy more than 1 hectare of crops within a few nighttime hours. And what is even more concerning than their destructive power is the way they learn. If not addressed early, the damage will quickly spiral out of control. Recovery costs are always far higher than initial prevention costs. And the longer it continues, the more cautious the herd becomes. Sound devices and simple deterrents may work at first, but over time, they gradually lose effectiveness. Wild boars learn very quickly. They adapt, remember, and adjust their behavior after only a few encounters. Instead of betting everything on a large-scale solution from the beginning, the first strategic step is surprisingly simple: set up a small trap for observation. This is not the stage for catching as many as possible, but for understanding the herd's behavior. Which one leads? Which one is the most alert? How long does it take for the entire group to enter the baited area? These seemingly minor details ultimately determine the outcome. Just one small mistake can cause the opportunity to disappear completely. If the herd detects any unusual sign, they may not return for days, even weeks. In wildlife control, understanding behavior is always more important than acting hastily. Patience in the early stage is an investment in long-term effectiveness. Once the herd's movement patterns and reactions become clear, the strategy begins to shift. The setup cannot remain unchanged for too long, as that would make the trap detectable. The trap height is adjusted, and the activation timing is recalculated with greater precision. When the herd's reaction time is reduced to a minimum, the chance of escape becomes almost non-existent. A drop trap does not need to be complex. What matters is timing. When triggered at the right moment, the entire herd has almost no time to scatter. Their herd instinct, the very trait that helps them survive, becomes their weakness. They move together, react together, and when captured, they are captured all at once. As a result, the damage is stopped at the source before it can spread. After successful captures, the trapping system continues to be refined. The mechanism becomes smoother, the structure stronger, yet without unnecessary complexity. Costs may increase, but every adjustment is based on real data collected in the field. Bait placement is optimized. Activation timing is fine-tuned. The goal is not the biggest trap, but the most suitable one for the specific conditions of each area. Ultimately, effectiveness does not come from scale, but from understanding. Understanding how the herd moves. Understanding how they react. And most importantly, understanding when to act. When these elements come together, control is gradually regained. If you have ever faced a similar situation, you will understand that this is not just a battle against an animal. It is a battle of patience, observation, and making the right decision at the right time. Block the right path, act at the critical moment, and above all, Always comply with local regulations and work with experienced professionals to ensure safety for both people and the surrounding environment.
Not everyone has ever seen an entire herd of wild boars trapped inside a single enclosure. I've witnessed it a few times, but never on that kind of scale. That night, when the system tightened, the tension filled the air, anchor lines humming, the net shaking hard. Inside, the herd panicked, trampling over each other and searching for a way out. And it all started from a patch of ground that had been torn apart. The first time I visited Uncle James's farm, things had already gone far beyond control. The grass field was ripped into large patches, the soil turned over heavily, with signs scattered across the entire area. You didn't even need to see the boars. Just looking at the ground told the whole story. A large herd had passed through during the night, and not just once. Neighbors nearby confirmed they kept coming back for weeks, despite every attempt to drive them away. Lights stayed on all night, guards rotated shifts, even multiple deterrent methods were used, but nothing worked. What stood out wasn't just the level of destruction, but how quickly the herd adapted. They returned on schedule, followed the same paths, and grew more confident each time. Once it had gone on that long, the solution couldn't be reactive anymore. It had to shift into a controlled, systematic approach. The next morning, we began setting up the trap early. The netting was carried into the forest, teams worked in sections, each anchor point secured tightly to tree trunks. The work seemed simple, but it demanded precision, because even a small misalignment could render the entire system useless. Once everything was in place, it became completely still. There was nothing left to do but wait for the right moment. The herd wasn't forced into the trap. They followed their own habits, guided by bait and familiarity. The lead boar appeared first, paused to observe, then stepped inside. The rest followed behind, one by one, without the slightest suspicion. Once they started feeding, their alertness gradually dropped. The longer they stayed, the deeper they moved into the center, never realizing the enclosure had already closed around them. The circular trap design worked exactly as intended. There were no blind spots to escape through, no weak points to break. When they sensed something wrong, their only instinct was to run. But in a closed circular space, running only drained their energy faster. They kept circling, crashing into the net, sending strong vibrations through it, yet the entire structure held firm. Every charge only tightened the net further, never weakening it. There were no gaps, no break points. No matter how they struggled, rammed, or tried to break free, it all led to the same outcome: exhaustion. That was when I understood the core principle of this system. Once the entire herd steps into the circle, the chance of escape is almost gone. Not because the trap is complex, but because it uses the herd's own behavior against them. The entire process was monitored through screens. It wasn't fear, it was intense focus. As notifications began appearing continuously from different points, we knew the system was working exactly as planned. Not just one trap, but multiple locations were reporting results. The feeling in that moment was a mix of tension and relief, as the long chain of damage was finally brought to a stop. What came next followed a set procedure. Each animal was controlled and transported, the numbers so large we had to rethink the logistics. But what mattered more was the outcome. The farm was no longer being destroyed every night, and the people living there could finally sleep peacefully again. On the drive back, in the quiet of the vehicle, I realized that success didn't come from a single moment, but from a process of observation and patience. Control doesn't come from the size of the trap, but from the precision of timing and execution. If you've ever faced a situation like this, share your experience. And if you found this useful, don't forget to follow for more real-world strategies like this.
In just one night, a field in central Texas was turned into a churned-up wasteland, rows of crops overturned as if a massive plow had passed through in the darkness. The estimated damage exceeded $60,000, and by sunrise, all that remained were dense tracks and completely destroyed patches of soil. With no other option, the farmer was forced to shift from defense to proactive control. But the question still lingered: could a single solution stop the entire herd, or would everything repeat the next night? The data from cameras and ground traces quickly revealed one thing: the herd was not moving randomly. They returned to the exact same route, the exact same point. An open area right at the edge of the field was selected as the trap location. A circular steel system was assembled with a diameter of nearly 10 meters, creating a space large enough for the entire herd to enter without feeling pressured. No gaps, no suspicious elements. Everything was designed to resemble a naturally safe zone. Steel panels were secured with deep-driven posts, strong enough to withstand the impact of fully grown boars. At the center of the trap, dozens of kilograms of corn were spread out daily. But the key factor was not the amount of bait, it was timing. For the first 4 nights, the gate remained fully open. The boars began to return, first as cautious scouts, then gradually the entire herd entered and fed without hesitation. Cameras captured every step, from initial hesitation to complete comfort moving inside the trap area. That was the critical moment, when suspicion disappeared. On the 5th night, everything changed. Once the entire herd had moved deep inside, the operator monitored remotely via phone. With a single signal sent, the steel gate dropped instantly. No loud noise, no prolonged chaos, just a brief moment, and the entire herd was contained inside. Every escape route vanished, and their only chance was gone in an instant. The result exceeded expectations. 37 wild boars captured in a single operation. The total estimated weight surpassed 3,000 pounds. But the real value was not in the numbers, it was in completely breaking the herd's return cycle. If only individual animals were removed, the rest would quickly adapt and become harder to approach. But when the entire herd is controlled at once, the cycle of destruction is effectively stopped. However, the damage caused by wild boars goes far beyond torn-up soil. They also carry invisible risks, from infectious diseases that can spread to livestock, to disruptions across the entire farming ecosystem.
Oh my god!
When they penetrate deep into livestock areas, they can become carriers of biological threats that farmers cannot manage through conventional means. More dangerously, when cornered, large adult boars can react with extreme aggression. Weighing hundreds of kilograms and capable of powerful impacts, they pose a threat not only to crops but to human safety. That is why control must be carried out remotely, using automated systems, rather than direct confrontation. When the operation ended, the field gradually returned to silence. Standing on the land that had just been reclaimed, the farmer understood this was more than a single success, it was a shift in approach. No more reactive responses, no more chasing losses. Instead, strategic control, calculated execution, and enough force to stop the problem at its source. And in that silence, one thing became clear. In nature, the most dangerous threat is not what appears suddenly, but what returns every night, precise, repetitive, and increasingly difficult to stop, until humans decide to change how they confront it.
African swine fever, or ASF, is an extremely dangerous virus for both domestic pigs and wild boars, and what makes it especially alarming is its ability to survive for a very long time in the environment. In cold conditions or in meat products that have not been properly processed, the virus can remain alive for hundreds of days, silently extending the risk of large-scale transmission. Although ASF does not pose a danger to humans, it is a serious threat to the pig industry and the global pork supply. The virus can spread through direct contact between wild boars and domestic pigs, through contaminated meat products, as well as through polluted environments. Because of how quickly it can spread and its impact on entire herds, whenever a suspected outbreak appears, specialist teams must immediately arrive in protective gear to control the site, prevent the risk from spreading further, and protect biosecurity in the surrounding area. For that reason, the damage in my uncle's field was no longer just a story of crop loss. When wild boars began appearing in large numbers around the land, the danger was not limited to rows of corn being torn apart, but also to the possibility that they could become a link carrying disease closer to livestock areas. A herd of wild boars passing through the farm could leave behind not only tracks, mud, and trampled crops, but also the fear of silent transmission that the human eye cannot see. That is why we could no longer keep reacting in a piecemeal way, dealing with the problem one night at a time, and instead had to move toward a more systematic management approach, where every step, from observation and movement control to trap deployment, had to serve a larger purpose: protecting crops, protecting livestock, and reducing biosecurity risks across the entire area. After completing the risk assessment and setting the traps, we moved into the stage that required the most patience: baiting. We used clean fermented corn, a scent that strongly attracts wild boars. Keeping the bait point consistent over multiple nights helped gather the whole herd into a predictable movement pattern, while also reducing environmental disturbance and limiting the risk of them spreading out to other farms. By the third day, they still stood at a distance, sniffing cautiously. By the fifth day, the boldest ones finally began to move closer and tasted. We kept watching until the 10th day. After several nights without detecting any danger, their level of caution gradually dropped. They kept coming back again and again, slowly treating the place as a safe feeding spot. And when the wild boars had lost most of their caution, the trap system also entered a ready state. That night was the decisive moment. Images from the cameras were transmitted live to the monitoring center, while we relied on the terrain and the size of the herd to choose the right moment to activate the trap. And along a narrow trail, a leg snare had been set at exactly the point where a wild boar usually stepped. This was not the kind of trap meant to hold an entire herd, but a method designed to target single individuals that broke away from the group or moved through a tight passage. After a long wait, one wild boar slowly advanced along the familiar trail. The moment its front leg touched the exact spot, the trap instantly tightened and held it in place. The whole moment happened very quickly, bringing many days of observation and waiting for the right time to an end. The full herd control strategy had finally proven effective. The next morning, the entire handling process would be carried out humanely and in full accordance with biosecurity standards. Protecting the environment, livestock, and human safety always remains the top priority. Because the ultimate goal is not just to stop immediate damage, but to build a long-term management system, carry out responsible population control, and maintain ecological balance. That is the sustainable solution for protecting crops and moving towards safer coexistence between humans and nature.
Recently, the fields have no longer been able to hold on to their once peaceful state. During the day, everything still appears lush and orderly, but after just one night, the entire scene is turned upside down. The soil is torn apart, plants are broken, and overlapping tracks cut across the garden like invisible paths. This is no longer the sign of a lone animal. It is an entire herd of wild boars operating in a coordinated manner. There are not many options left. The farmers are forced to act, not to hunt, but to protect their crops and livelihoods. Traps were set the night before, placed precisely along the familiar routes the boars frequently use. Bait is scattered in segments, naturally guiding their behavior. At first light, the top priority is to return and inspect the entire system. The first cage sits at the edge of the field. Inside is a small group. Immediately, one detail becomes clear. Their coats are not uniform. Some are jet black, others dark brown, and a few even have stripes. This is no coincidence. It suggests that multiple groups have merged, a sign that the herd is expanding and rapidly adapting to the environment. In just a few weeks, this area could become their regular feeding ground. Inside the cage, the boars crowd together, panting, trying to break free. At another trap, the reaction is completely different. Some repeatedly slam into the steel frame, producing sharp, jarring sounds. Others move more slowly, using their snouts to probe each metal bar, patiently searching for even the smallest gap. This is something many people tend to overlook. Not every animal reacts the same way. When confined in a limited space, survival instincts manifest in different forms. In another corner, a smaller trap has also proven effective. Inside is an adult along with several young ones. The tight space prevents them from accelerating or coordinating as they would in the wild. And that is precisely the advantage of the trap. A large system is not always necessary. With the right placement at the right time, even the strongest individuals can be controlled. The results from the previous night make that clear. Effective traps are not a matter of luck, but the result of careful observation, calculation, and precise placement along the herd's movement routes. But it does not stop there. The traps remain in place, and the bait continues to be replenished. The next night will be another test. And then, slam! A trap snaps shut. Inside, a wild boar thrashes violently. This is a sign that the herd's vigilance is beginning to decline. Not long after, at another location, a large individual appears. It moves slowly, far more cautious than the others before it. It stops, observes, steps back, then moves forward again along the bait trail. Every step is calculated, but it only takes a moment. Slam! The second trap closes. Inside is a scene of chaos. Based on its size and behavior, this could be a dominant individual, experienced and responsible for much of the damage in the area. Elsewhere, two individuals are trapped at the same time. They panic, repeatedly crashing into the steel frame. But outside, a few others have sensed something is wrong. They pause, hesitate for a split second, then turn and disappear into the deep forest. The noise gradually fades, leaving the traps still trembling in the air. And that is the reality that must be accepted. No system is perfectly effective. The goal is not to capture them all, but to reduce the herd and limit the damage to the crops. The next morning, everyone returns to check. Some individuals are still inside the cages. One repeatedly leaps upward, using its full weight to try to break through the top, but to no avail. The next steps are carried out quickly. The cages are secured, and all captured boars are transported away from the farming area, preventing any chance of their return in the following nights. Everything is carried out according to proper procedures and regulations. The final stage is handled in a controlled manner, in compliance with relevant guidelines. No prolonging, no spectacle. This is not hunting. This is how farmers protect what they have built. And the question remains, when the damage continues to grow, what other choice do they really have?
Everything didn't begin on a farm, but at the largest freshwater reservoir in Coconino County, a source that sustains tens of thousands of people. Yet with each passing day, that water source is being steadily contaminated. Wild boars surge down like a black flood, tearing apart the shoreline, churning up the muddy bottom, turning the entire reservoir into a polluted swamp. This is no longer an isolated incident, it is a full-scale crisis. And once the situation spiraled out of control, our rapid response team had no choice but to intervene. Emergency access permits were quickly secured from landowners surrounding the reservoir. Immediately after that came 48 hours of continuous surveillance. We tracked deep imprints in the mud, reading every subtle sign. Fresh rub marks on pine trees up to 90 centimeters high were still clearly visible, evidence that the sounder had been active here for multiple consecutive nights. Once their movement routes were mapped, I began the freebaiting phase. Food was spread consistently over several days, with no traps, no interference, only to build habit and trust. And when their caution finally faded, we launched the first strike. A smart corral trap was deployed, fully connected to a smartphone via the cellular network. Around 7 p.m., my phone vibrated. I opened the app. On the screen, an entire group of black wild boars was feeding beneath the bait station. A prompt appeared, "Do you want to close the gate?" I held my breath. My finger tapped yes. Instantly, the gate dropped. The entire sounder was captured in a single moment. At 11:27 p.m., we moved on to the next group. But this time, everything had changed. A few intelligent individuals had stepped back just seconds before the gate dropped. They had learned their first lesson. From that moment on, the group became extremely cautious. They avoided enclosed structures, steering clear of anything that felt unfamiliar. To continue, we had to shift strategy, not just setting traps, but controlling their behavior through space itself. At an open clearing near the forest edge, I constructed a large corral trap using heavy-duty steel panels. The key was in the design. 2 drop gates were positioned from different directions, creating the illusion of multiple escape routes. Wild boars are naturally suspicious, especially of confined spaces. But an open layout with visible exits can trick their survival instincts into believing it's just a safe feeding ground. And just as expected, the sounder gradually lowered its guard, moving deeper into the center of the trap. When the moment came, both steel gates slammed down simultaneously. Every escape route vanished in an instant. Caught off guard, the boars panicked, crashing violently into the mesh walls. After being scattered, the most cunning group moved toward an exposed grassy slope near the reservoir. There, another trap system was set up using reinforced pipe fencing, with no roof. From a distance, it looked no different from a typical livestock pen. A thick layer of corn was spread at the center, and we waited patiently. When the signal came, more than a dozen boars of varying sizes and colors were contained inside. The trigger command was sent remotely. Instantly, the entire structure shook under the force of their impact. After 2 consecutive full captures, the main group responsible for contaminating the water source had been completely removed. A massive circular trap, patented by Jaeger Pro, was deployed as the final stronghold. On the monitoring screen, a large sounder, dark as the night, was cautiously entering the trap zone. One by one, they stepped across the boundary, unaware of what awaited them. And then, the heavy steel gates dropped all at once. Controlling invasive wildlife in the United States is not about brute force, it is a battle of intelligence, powered by modern technology. Every trap, every tap on a smartphone screen is the result of careful behavioral research. Only through precision, patience, and innovation can we truly protect water sources, farmland, and the fragile balance of nature.
A morning that seemed ordinary suddenly reveals a completely different scene. The ground is torn up, rows of crops uprooted, leaving scattered gaps as if an invisible force had swept through. There are no signs of storms or machinery, only deep tracks pressed into the soft soil, stretching in a familiar direction. It points to one clear fact: the wild boar herd has returned, following the same route, repeating the same pattern night after night. First, the damage appears scattered and easy to overlook. A corner of the field disturbed, a few plants lightly damaged. But within days, everything begins to change. The signs grow denser, the affected area expands quickly. The boars no longer move alone, but in organized groups, repeatedly returning to places where they once found food. The real concern is not just their numbers, but how fast they learn. Each approach becomes an adjustment in behavior. The pin-style traps begin to appear as a direct response to this situation. They are not placed randomly, but positioned precisely along routes the herd has used many times. Strong steel frames form an enclosed space, large enough to hold multiple animals at once. This is not just a trap, but a calculated stop point based on the movement patterns of the entire group. Inside the trap, the one-way gate mechanism plays a critical role. As the boars enter, the gate opens naturally. But once they pass through, it locks automatically, preventing any return. This does not trigger immediate panic, allowing the herd's behavior to remain stable in the first moments, giving other animals time to follow inside.
There you go. Female scout. Another female.
Bait is always placed deep inside, forcing the lead animal to move fully in before stopping. When one begins to feed, the others quickly follow. This chain reaction increases the trap's effectiveness. In a short time, multiple animals can be contained without any direct intervention. In areas with higher boar density, net traps become the next step. No longer limited to a small space, the system expands to surround an entire feeding zone. At first, the net is kept raised, allowing the herd to move in and out freely, creating a complete sense of safety. Over several days, the herd forms a new routine: enter, feed, and leave without danger. When their alertness drops low enough, The activation moment is chosen. The net drops all at once, covering the area in seconds and capturing the entire group with no chance of escape. In states like Texas, some operations even use daytime helicopter observation to map movement routes before deploying traps at night. However, in situations where individual animals must be handled quickly, snare traps are still used. Cable loops are hidden beneath a thin layer of soil, placed exactly along familiar paths. When a boar steps into position, the loop tightens instantly, fast, precise, and nearly silent. Each method has its limits, but when combined, they form a complete control system. From holding entire herds in pin traps, covering wide areas with nets, to precisely targeting individuals with snares, all approaches follow the same principle. Not direct confrontation, but using the animal's own behavior to control it effectively.
Se convierte en un lugar seguro para los marcias.
This is a quiet process that demands patience and constant observation. No method works if placed in the wrong location or at the wrong time. But when every factor is calculated correctly, traps not only reduce damage, but also help restore balance. And the question remains, can humans always stay one step ahead, or will they continue adapting to the ever-changing behavior of wild boar herds?
In Bavaria, where dense forests intertwine with agricultural land, the presence of wild boars is no longer a rare occurrence. Their numbers continue to grow, spilling into fields and turning the soil into chaotic, torn-up patches. More concerning is that even during the day, some individuals are now pushing deeper into residential areas, crossing roads, appearing near homes and gardens. Encounters are no longer unusual, and in some cases, people have been attacked when getting too close. The situation has escalated rapidly, forcing authorities to launch a large-scale control operation. Reconnaissance efforts are carried out continuously, combining helicopters and unmanned aerial devices to pinpoint exactly where the herds are hiding and the routes they follow. The data quickly reveals a clear pattern. They do not move randomly, but repeat familiar paths night after night. Based on this information, control teams begin planning trap installations at key points. Every detail is carefully calculated, because even a small mistake could cause the entire herd to disappear and become more cautious. Once the location is confirmed, the trap setup process officially begins. Heavy-duty steel mesh panels are transported into the selected area and assembled into a closed circular structure based on prior survey data. Steel posts are driven deep into the damp forest ground and tightened with high-tension straps to ensure absolute stability. The sound of metal echoes, breaking the stillness of the Bavarian forest. From the outside, the structure appears simple, just a circular fence. But in reality, it is a large-scale trap, designed to close at the precise decisive moment. Once the frame is complete, the control team moves into the final preparation stage. Infrared cameras are installed around the perimeter, mounted high on tree trunks to monitor the entire approach to the trap. Every action is carried out quickly and with strict control to minimize human traces, avoiding any disruption to the herd's natural behavior. Then, bait is placed. Corn and sugar beets, common food sources for wild boars in Europe, are scattered to form a trail leading inward. The largest portion is placed at the center, acting as the main attractant, gradually drawing the herd deeper inside without them realizing the boundary around them.
Who's automatically?
Drop trap.
When everything is ready, the area returns to silence. No signs of human activity remain, only the faint scent of food drifting through the cold air. Somewhere in the forest, sensitive noses have already picked up the signal. As night falls, the silence grows heavier. Then, the first movements appear on the monitoring screens. The herd has returned. The lead boar steps forward, pauses, sniffs, and scans the surroundings. Behind it, the rest of the group waits in the darkness. Naturally cautious, they are slowly pulled closer by the scent of food. Guided by the leader, one by one they begin to enter, without hesitation, without suspicion. When the entire herd is fully inside the trap's range, the decisive moment arrives. The trap gate is triggered. A sudden metallic sound shatters the forest stillness. Instantly, the entire herd erupts into panic. They rush in all directions, slamming into the fence, trampling over one another in an attempt to escape. The ground is churned up under the weight of dozens of bodies. The largest individuals throw their full force against the steel structure, but the flexible mesh system absorbs the impact without breaking. Smaller ones try to leap over, but the height and enclosure stop every attempt. Chaos spreads as they realize there is no way out. When the control team returns, the scene has changed. The herd is no longer violently struggling. Many are exhausted after hours of trying to escape, while others stand still in a state of high alert. With more than 20 animals contained in a single capture, the farmer can finally breathe a sigh of relief. This is not just the result of one night's effort, but proof of a precise strategy, built on a deep understanding of the species' behavior. And this time, the cycle of destruction has truly been broken.
Come on. There we go. Oh.